So with Jordan Peele's Us about to come out, I figured I'd go back and review what was his first movie, Get Out. So Get Out stars Daniel Kaluuya as Chris, whose girlfriend wants to take him back to her parents' house so that he can meet the family and stuff like that. But he's kind of weary at first because he's black and she hasn't told her parents yet that he's black, and he's kind of confused as to why. And he's like, will they be weird? He just feels really uncomfortable about the whole thing, but they do it anyway. She convinces him, and although at first things seem pretty normal, he starts to notice a bunch of really weird things going on around the place and starts to kind of slowly figure out what's exactly going on. And once he does figure out, uncover this crazy, secret, disturbing thing that all these people are doing, you're like, whoa. And it's a crazy horror film ride with some interesting twists and some social commentary and even a little bit of humor in it. So starting right off with the positives, right off the bat, this movie gives off a kind of vibe where you're unsettled. You're like, something's not right here. You feel like, because there's the music, the main theme of the movie, which is a really good song. It got stuck in my head after watching the movie. And then you got the character of Rose, played by Allison Williams, who, even though she's acting normal and acting nice and acting compassionate towards Chris and kind of be going hard on the cop for wanting to see his license even though he wasn't driving, doing all the kinds of stuff like that, still something about her, whether it's the expression on her face, sometimes a little blank expression that she has while she's driving, or just the weird way she says things, you're just not quite, you're like, something's off about this chick. And then you get to the house with her family and you realize right away that something's off about them. You don't know exactly what it is. And then you see that there's people, working for them. They're all black people, like the groundskeeper and the kitchen lady, and they're all not acting normal. They're just, something's off about them. And you're like, what's going on here? Because you don't know, you have no idea what exactly is going on at first. You have so many different theories going through your head, and they probably won't be the right one, even though foreshadowing in this movie is crazy and so on the nose after watching it a second time. Specifically the scene where the dad, Dean Armitage, is like, oh, we keep a little piece of her in here. In the kitchen, he's talking about where the black lady named Georgina is working, and it just, you don't realize it at first. It goes right over your head the first time watching the movie, but the second time watching it, guys, I'm going to get into spoilers. If you haven't seen this movie, I would probably not watch this video. I would first watch the movie, then come back and watch this review. Anyhow, we find out in the end that these rich white people are kind of taking their obsession with black people too far, and they're taking over their bodies. Once their own bodies get too old and they can't use them anymore, they start deteriorating, they transfer their consciousness over to a black body so they can be faster, cooler, stronger, and younger, whatever. And specifically black people, for a lot of those reasons, even though for some of the reasons they could use other people. But the main point of this movie is about the kind of crazy obsession that a lot of white people have about black people, and they try too hard to be like them, and then they end up, in this movie specifically, actually becoming them. So in that scene, the foreshadowing is just so on the nose, not realizing it the first time, and then the second time, because he's talking about his mother, Dean's mother and Rose's grandmother, says we keep a little piece of her in here. It literally means that she is in the body of Georgina. And we had no idea what that meant first time watching it. Now you're like, oh, of course, that's so obvious. How did I not realize that? Somehow Jordan Peele manages to put these little moments of foreshadowing in there that seem so obvious watching it the second time, but watching it the first time, you have no idea because you don't know what's really going on there, and it just goes right over your head. There's also some scenes in this movie that are genuinely scary and genuinely intriguing, and they will probably be known as classic horror scenes as the years go on, such as the running scene when Chris is outside to have a smoke at night, and one of the groundskeeper guy is running towards him, who is actually the grandpa in that body. He's running towards him at night, just like running straight towards him really fast, and it's freaky as hell while you're watching that. You're like, what the fuck is he doing? I don't understand this. And then it was just a really creepy scene. You have no idea what's going on, why he's doing this, and he seems like almost a robot. You can tell there's something wrong with the guy. He's not a normal person, and Chris is freaked out and you're freaked out. There's also the scene with the hypnotizing scene where Rose's mother is hypnotizing Chris, and holy shit, that scene is so mesmerizing. It's almost like I myself was getting hypnotized while I was watching the scene. Just how incredibly filmed it was, and man, it just sucked me right in, and it was crazy how well some of these scenes were, and they will definitely go down as classic horror scenes. Now, this movie, while it's definitely a horror movie, is not a straight up horror, and it touches on some other things as well. First of all, it's got some very important social commentary about how white people view black people and how they want to be like them. I kind of talked about that earlier, but I just feel like I should mention it again, that it does that so well, and it manages to fit within the story that they're telling and not seem preachy at all. Also, this movie has a surprising amount of humor, especially coming from Lil Rel Howery. I hope I said that right, but he's the TSA agent who's kind of Chris's friend, and he's in his own part of the country or whatever. I don't know exactly where Chris is relative to where his home is and where this guy is, but he's trying to figure out exactly what's going on because he's calling Chris and he's not answering. And right away, once Chris said that he was going there and told him about all the stuff that's going on, him, like us, the audience, knew that something wasn't right. And once Chris stopped answering his phone, he starts to kind of look into it and talk to the police, and they won't help him, so he has to figure it out on his own. Luckily, he comes to rescue at the end, but the dude just has some really funny lines that don't detract from the horror or the drama of the movie at all. It fits perfectly, and it just makes sense because that's just the way this character is. I also liked the initial twist. The first twist where Chris, it's the second time that he sees that little door open in that little, I don't know what it is, like a kind of little closet or something. I don't know exactly what that thing is called, but he goes in there and he sees all these pictures with Rose with a bunch of black guys, tons and tons of black guys, and she had told him that he's the first black guy that she had dated, and he's like, what the hell is going on here? And we're wondering with him, like, it was just such an intense scene, and we're realizing that she is in on whatever the weird stuff is that everyone else is doing, because we had kind of been led to believe that she was not in on it, that she was about to help him leave and they were going to go away together, and that it was her crazy family that was all doing whatever they were doing. We didn't know exactly what it was yet, but turns out she was in on it too, and we're like, holy shit, Chris is screwed now. Just such a great scene, even though, not going to lie, don't mean to brag, but I actually could tell she was in on it just because sometimes how weird she would act, and once that reveal came, it was a really good reveal, and it was probably better than the rest of the third act, which I'm about to get to. So transitioning from that into my negatives, I did not exactly love what they did with the third act. In fact, I felt it kind of fell apart. Now, let me be clear about this. It's not about the concept, because the concept is really, really good. I already touched on the concept. It's a social commentary of white people wanting to be like black people, so when their bodies deteriorate, they literally transfer into one. The concept is good. The execution, on the other hand, was not great. And that's part of the reason why I don't necessarily love this movie as much as most people do. You got the scene with the dad, Dean, in the kind of whatever that is, the lab, where he's cutting off the part of the dude's head, and just so much ridiculous shit happens at the end, and it all happens so fast. I wish they would have just kind of slowed it down a little bit, because this movie has a ton of build-up. 90% of the movie is build-up, and then 10% of it is payoff, and I just feel like the payoff isn't good enough for what the build-up was. I don't know if that makes sense, and I feel like I'm one of the only people that's actually saying this, but somehow the third act just fell flat to me. I just wish they could have executed it better. And here's my main issue. is that, and I had this problem with Sorry to Bother You as well, but it doesn't, it was a lot worse in that movie. I'm not going to say specifically what it was, but basically I have a problem with movies that are, for the most part, realistic for the majority of the movie, and it's working for what it is, and you want a twist that is also somewhat realistic. At least I do, and then they try to portray real life issue in a ridiculous, over the top way. I'm not particularly fond of when movies do that. Doesn't ruin the movie at all in Get Out like it kind of did for me in Sorry to Bother You. It was not nearly as bad as that. Still, I wish they could have done it a little bit differently without making that complete ridiculous sci-fi turn in that last part of the movie. Just wish they would have executed that ending a little better. I hope that makes sense to you guys. It also just happened way too fast. I wish the ending would have gone on a little bit longer so that the payoff would have been worth it for all the buildup, which the buildup was really good. Payoff, not as good. That was the really only huge negative I had. Another thing is sometimes the acting can be a bit weird, especially from Allison Williams as Rose, and maybe they do that on purpose. I can totally understand that because of the type of movie that it is. It's kind of satirical, and I get it. It just sometimes completely takes me out of what's going on when she does these ridiculous, just so monotone delivery of her lines. It's mostly her, sometimes from the other family members too, but sometimes just like, what the hell? It takes me out of it a little bit, even though I can get why they were doing that and what they were going for. Also, I have a small complaint with the scene where they hit the deer. While I like it when he goes over to the deer and sees it dying, I thought that was a really interesting part. The actual part where they hit the deer just looked really weird. Like, what the hell just happened? The way they filmed it, it didn't seem like they'd actually hit a deer that was running across the street. It almost looked like some weird flying alien or something. It just didn't look right when it happened. So I was, Another thing that kind of took me out of the movie. Another small complaint, but I kind of got to mention it. And the last thing I have to say, it's not really a negative, as more as a question, just kind of a general confusion about the movie. Maybe if one of you guys knows the answers to this, please post in the comments and let me know. Why exactly does the Flash, when he does the Flash, why does that let out the original person? Did they explain that at all? It's of all things, why that? Seems like a dumb complaint. It's not a complaint. It's just kind of more of a question as to why exactly is that the way it works. Of all things, a Flash, it's just, why? If anyone knows, please let me know, because maybe I missed it in the movie. It just seems like a strange thing that would let out the original owner of the body when there's barely any of them left in there. And how long does it last either? I know in horror movies, not everything needs a specific answer, but something like this, I just feel like, I'm just curious, that's all. So overall, this movie is very unique. It's got a great main theme. It's got genuine horror. It's got some amazing horror scenes that are going to be classic scenes for a while. They're going to be talked about for a while. It's got some great social commentary. It's got some good, surprising humor, but it falters, in my opinion, quite a bit towards the end, and I just wish they would have executed that better with all the build-up that was so good, and then just the payoff fell flat and just didn't do it for me. That's the really only main issue I have with this movie, but it's kind of a big part to me because sticking the landing is huge. The other complaints I had were so small that they don't really do much, but that is a big one for sure. And overall, I'm going to give this movie a 7 out of 10. Very solid horror movie, and I'm really looking forward to seeing Us. So guys, have you seen Get Out? If so, what do you think? Leave a comment below, and if you're new here, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button. Hit the notification bell so you get notified when I post a video. I got some more stuff coming soon. Spread the word, and I will see you soon.